As I've mentioned, the purpose of this series of tutorials is to help you establish an organized workflow for your image processing. Well, what is a workflow and why would you want to use one? I think some people are wary of the idea of adhering to a rigid set of steps that they have to follow with every image that they work on. That's not how my workflow operates. My workflow that I'm going to be teaching you is more of a set of guidelines or a framework. Or perhaps the best way to think about it is as a philosophy. It's a way to approach your image processing so that you have a clear path ahead, and you also have some basic framework set up so that you understand how to make adjustments that are non-destructive and reversible, giving you more creative options as you move along instead of less. Perhaps it's kind of like a recipe. A master chef may follow a recipe loosely. That recipe is there as a set of guidelines, but within that recipe, someone who's a very good cook can do a lot of experimentation and try different things, but that recipe is going to help narrow down the direction that they want to head. It also allows them to come back in the future and reproduce what they did before. And that's really what we're trying to do with this image processing workflow. When I work through my workflow, I'm left with a set of adjustments, all in different layers, that have been applied in a certain sequence for the best results, and they're left so that I can at any point come back and make further adjustments or completely back out of some adjustments if I decide to. And so that workflow actually opens up more creative possibilities for me because I have even more potential to adjust things and experiment with things without doing permanent damage that's irreversible to my image. Let's take a look at the workflow that we're going to be learning. This is the workflow that I use on a regular basis. And like I said, it's kind of a framework. It's the set of steps that I progress through to get from the beginning to the end of my image processing. But within this workflow is all kinds of room for trying different things and going in different directions. Because I work with raw image files, I always start with making raw adjustments. That's where my workflow really begins. We'll be talking about that. Once I've made raw adjustments to optimize my file for working in Photoshop, I bring it into Photoshop and begin the rest of the workflow. And the next step would be cleanup and perspective control. Moving on to any advanced cloning if there's something drastic that needs to be removed from the image. If there's any cropping that needs to be done to the image, this is a good time to work on that, and we'll look at ways to do non-destructive cropping so that those pixels that are cropped are not permanently lost. Additional global contrast and color is next. When I say additional, that's because some initial contrast and color adjustments are made back here in the raw adjustments. They're called global contrast and color adjustments because they're adjustments that we're going to be making to the entire image, and we want to make image-wide adjustments first and get the entire image contrast and color optimized before we go on to making more targeted adjustments. Next, I make adjustments to balance and control light and shadow. Finally, once all of those steps are worked with, it's time to start targeting creative adjustments, localized adjustments. This is where I get into adjusting certain small localized parts of my image. We need to know how to save our work so that all of that processing that we've done is there for us to come back to and work with again in the future in a non-destructive, non-compressed way. And then finally, we'll talk about how to prepare our processed images for different kinds of output, such as printing or viewing on the web. So that's a quick overview to the various stages that we're going to be working with and working through during these tutorials.